Hello students, today I am going to discuss two important literary terms, that is simile and metaphor. Poet and writers and dramatists make ample use of simile and metaphor in their writings to make them more descriptive and enjoyable. So, first of all, we are going to discuss an important figure of speech that is called as simile. What is a simile? Simile is an explicit comparison between two things using like or as. Explicit means that which is stated clearly or expressed without vagueness. So, simile is an explicit comparison between two things using like or as. We have to remember this important thing that simile uses like or as for comparison. A simile is one of the most common forms of figurative language. Examples of similes can be found just about anywhere from poems to songs to lyrics in prose and even in everyday conversations. For example, we are going to discuss some of the examples of simile. He is as strong as an ox. As I have earlier told you that it is a comparison between two things using like or as. So, in any sentence, this will be the words like or as, they are going to be used. That is why it is called as an explicit comparison. He is as strong as an ox. This simile conveys the idea that a person possessing great physical strength like ox. In the same way, second sentence, her dancing was as smooth as a flowing river. It means that the girl's dancing is effortless dancing of a girl compared to effortless moving of a river. In the third sentence, they fought like cats and dogs. It conveys the idea that frequent violent arguments between two people. Third sentence is, this path meanders like a stream. The path curves back and forth across landscape like meandering streams. In the next sentence, that little girl is as sweet as honey, which shows that the girl is exceptionally sweet or kind or charming. He is as busy as a bee. It means a person is hardworking like bee. In the next sentence, swinging on those bars, you look like a monkey. This sentence conveys the idea that rolling forward and doing somersaults like a monkey. A room without a book is like a body without a soul. A very beautiful comparison which conveys that everybody has a soul inside it which breathes and lives. Without this soul, a body is as good as dead. In the same way, books are the life and soul of a room. They let you dream and make you soar high. We are going to look at some of the examples of similes in classic literature. First of all, we should know that simile comes from the Latin word similias, meaning similar and like, which seems fitting since the comparison indicated by a simile will typically contain the words as or like. Some of the examples of similes in classical literature. Examples of similes can be seen in classic literature such as a poem Red Red Rose by Robert Burns. He uses simile in these lines. Oh, my love is like a red rose that newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like the melody that sweetly played in tune. Robert Burns uses a simile to describe the beauty of his beloved. He says that his love is a fresh red rose that blossoms in the spring. Another example of simile can be found in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. When Romeo talks to Mercutio before the Capulets' party, he makes the following comparison about love. Is love a tender thing? It is rough. It is too rough, too rude, too boisterous, and it pricks like thorn. These lines expresses that love pricks an individual's sentiments in the same manner that a thorn prickles or hurt human skin. As we move further, we will look at some of the additional features of simile. A simile is a figure of speech that directly compares two unlike things. We should always remember that simile compares two unlike things. Simile most often make use of the connecting words like or as, but can also use other words that indicate explicit comparison. Use other words. Remember, in the lines by William Wordsworth line, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over hills, over vales and hills, is an example of simile. The poet envisions himself as a free cloud that floats alone in a blue sky above valleys and the mountains. By choosing this simile, Wordsworth describes his loneliness. The thing that we should remember here is that because the comparison established by a simile is not literal, it is not literal. How? Poet isn't literally a cloud. Similes are a form of figurative language that we should always remember. While most of the similes use the connecting words like and as, from the starting of the simile, we are learning that it make use of two words. For comparison, it make use of two words, that is like or as for comparison. But simile can use other words that create a direct comparison, including other connecting words such as so, or, then, or verbs of comparison such as compare and resemble. Similes can make our language more descriptive and enjoyable. Why the writers make use of simile? Why it is most commonly used figure of speech in English literature, whether it is poetry, whether it is drama or prose, because it makes our language more descriptive and enjoyable. Writers, poets and songwriters make use of similes often to add depth and emphasize what they are trying to convey to the reader or listeners. Similes can be funny, serious, mean or creative. Similes are used in literature to make writing more vivid and powerful. A simile is intended to paint a picture. It means it creates an image in the mind of the reader about a particular character or situation. So, we are going to summarize what is an simile. Simile is a comparison between two things. It uses comparison terms like as, resembles. It is figurative in meaning. It is used frequently in writing to express deeper meaning, convey complexity and add appeal. Similes make writing concise and add greater significance to text. So, after discussing simile, we are going to discuss our next figure of speech, an important literary term metaphor, because similes and metaphor, so if we are going to study simile, it is necessary, it becomes necessary to study metaphor also, because they both use both use comparisons. A metaphor is a figure of speech that makes an implicit, implied, or hidden comparison between two things that are unrelated but which share some common characteristics. The metaphor is a figure of speech that makes an implicit. Implicit means that which is not clearly expressed or stated, that which is hidden. Metaphor comes from the Greek word metapherein, which means to carry over or to transfer. A metaphor carries meaning from one concept to another by stating or implying that one is the same or like the other. Few examples of metaphor. In other words, a resemblance of two contradictory or different objects is made based on a single or some common characteristics. We should remember this, that resemblance of two contradictory or different object is made based on a single or some common characteristics. For example, her voice is music to his ears, which implies that her voice makes him feel happy. I'm drowning in a sea of grief. This example means that grief is so overwhelming that person feels helpless, like they are being pulled underwater. He broke my heart. It implies that a person is not literally hurt, just feeling hurt and sad. His words cut deeper than a knife. It means that words don't materialize into sharp objects. Someone had said something hurtful to another. He is the apple of my eye. There is no apple in someone's eyes. The apple is someone held dear. Basics of metaphor. A metaphor states that one thing is another thing. It equates those two things not because they are actually the same, but for the sake of comparison or symbolism. A metaphor states that one thing is another thing. It equates two things not because they actually are same, but it is for the sake of comparison or symbolism. If you take a metaphor literally, it will probably sound very strange. For example, words are daggers when spoken in anger. Again, it means that words don't materialize into sharp objects like daggers. Metaphors are used in poetry, literature, and drama anytime someone wants to add some color to their language. Now we are going to discuss some types of metaphor. Extended metaphor. It uses principal, subject along with several subsidiary comparisons and subjects such as Shakespeare has used. In the lines, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. The one man in his time plays many parts. In this metaphor implies that life is like a play. It is a principal subject. All the world's a stage. Life is like a play on stage. And the subsidiary comparisons, that we all are merely actors playing out different scenes. Second type of metaphor is implicit metaphor. It does not clearly state a comparison and the tenor is not revealed or specified. In this implicit metaphor, again, which is not stated clearly, the tenor is not revealed or specified, such as David is drowning in love. Here love is compared to water, but what is not mentioned? The tenor is not mentioned, and the tenor is water, but water is not mentioned. Another type of metaphor is dead metaphor. A dead metaphor is a metaphor that has lost its figurative value due to overuse or uses an image that does not exist anymore, such as, for examples, mouth of a river, falling in love, the light of my life, heart of gold. Next type of metaphor is mixed metaphor. A mixed metaphor is exactly what it sounds like, a combination of two unrelated. A combination of two unrelated metaphors. These can occur accidentally, or a writer may string incompatible metaphors together for comic effect. Two of the unrelated metaphors, they are combined together to bring about a comic effect. For example, he was born with a silver foot in his mouth combines the metaphors. To be born with a silver spoon in one's mouth, meaning to be born privileged, to put one's foot in one's mouth, to say something embarrassing to create humorous effect. So, why writers make use of metaphor in their writings? A metaphor helps the writer create a verbal picture that helps the reader to see ideas more clearly. It helps the writer convey his or her feeling more strongly. Metaphor is a key component of all forms of literature, including poetry, prose, and drama. This is not only because metaphor is a highly useful literary device, but also because it is a vital part of all language and communication. Metaphors allow writers to present or summarize a very complex idea that is developed throughout the part of all the text. So, we are going to sum up what is a metaphor. Metaphor is an implicit comparison, that comparison which is not stated clearly between two unrelated things which share common characteristics. Second important thing is that it is different from simile because it does not use the words like and as for comparison. Metaphor often states the comparison most emotively. Now we are going to see what is the difference between simile and metaphor, or we can say we are going to revise what is the difference between simile and metaphor. Simile is a literary device that involves the comparison of two different objects or actions, whereas metaphor is a literary device where a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. We have seen many of the examples. Simile uses connecting words such as like and as. Metaphor do not use connecting words such as like and as. Similes make explicit comparisons. We can clearly see the comparison being made. Metaphors make implicit comparisons. The comparisons are not stated clearly. We have to understand it from the text. I hope the terms simile and metaphor